Hello, and welcome to a special edition with Rob Claar, CEO of HekaBio. Rob has been a mover and shaker in the Japan healthcare industry, but also representing healthcare interests in Japan on the global stage as well. And as we're seeing a very strong rise of ecosystem leadership in Japan and beyond, we wanted to speak with Rob a bit today to share his insights about what's going on the global stage, what's going on in Japan, and some key announcements that he has to share about exciting things that are coming up soon. So Rob, it's great to have you here. You're already extremely connected in Japan and around the world, but for those who don't know you, maybe you could give a little bit of background as to who you are and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Great, thanks so much for having me, Ryan. So Rob Claar, thank you for the introduction. I'm the CEO of HekaBio. HekaBio was founded in 2016, November of 2016, and since then we've been working on in-licensing, development, and soon-to-be commercialization of great innovations from around the world. Drugs, devices, and also regenerative medicine therapies. We're working on all of those. And so it puts us in a little bit of a unique position in terms of, most companies are focused on one or the other and not all three of those modalities. But we like to be sort of modality agnostic in a sense that enables us to really pick and choose great innovations from around the world that we think are a great fit for Japan. So that's what we're up to. As a company, we are reviewing 200 innovations every year, so something new every day. We look through those innovations, we filter them down with the intention to onboard and in-license maybe 2 of those a year, so it's like a 1% type of yield that we expect. But continuing to engage with that network around the world, and continuing to engage with the authorities here in Japan and the KOLs here in Japan, the key opinion leaders here in Japan, in order to pick those nuggets that are a great fit, have an opportunity to get positive reimbursement in the Japan healthcare system, and have impact for patients and their families. So that's what we're all about. In some ways, we feel like we're in the right place at the right time. When I first got to Japan, 1987, spent the first couple years learning Japanese. Then I was fortunate enough to get hired by a think tank called Sanwa Soken. Back at that time, I was very fortunate to be able to learn a lot about. I figured, if you want to learn a little bit about a lot of things in your career, choose a consultancy. So that's what I did. Joining a think tank was a great choice for me because I got to learn so much about Japan, Japanese business culture, and this was back before the bubble burst. But also to be able to learn about the healthcare system and the policies, and how does Japan's healthcare system compare with other systems around the world. And I found that so interesting, and that was really the motivation for me to stay and to see what kind of impact I could have, because I had the opportunity to go around Japan, meet one-on-one with some doctors, become friends with some doctors, and understand their frustrations with the healthcare system at that time and the pace at which innovations were coming into Japan. So this is back in the late 80s and early 90s, and I'm already coming face to face with this issue of the drug lag that is so commonly quoted today. But many of those issues were already in place then, and those frustrations about the pace at which innovations are coming in, something that I decided that I would devote my career to trying to help reverse or impact in some way. So it's been a great pleasure for me to be able to have some impact there and kind of measure the impact that we have as a company in terms of the number of patients that we're able to help through bringing those technologies in.
Fantastic. And about a year ago, we were talking about some of the developments in things like the English language channel for overseas companies to understand pathways in Japan, among other things.
Yeah.
How would you describe, where we're at now, where Japan is at now in terms of those improvements and reducing drug loss in Japan?
Yeah.
Drug leg.
Yeah.
Drug leg. What's the term again?
So typically, I think the lag is really the delay.
Right.
The loss is when something's been approved for some time overseas and nobody's moving on it.
Right.
In Japan. So that's where they come in with the loss. I think we're probably more focused on the lag than the loss because we like to get involved early to try to coordinate and synchronize those approvals. So that, in an ideal scenario, we would actually seek simultaneous approval in the US and Japan and avoid any occurrence of the lag to begin with, if we can. That's our ideal scenario, where we get involved with a program early, synchronize the regulatory process, the clinical process, US and Japan, and get a simultaneous or near simultaneous approval. So that's our goal. We're really focused on the lag aspect.
Drug lag.
Yeah.
And so you've been so dialed into the Japan market for years, listening to the KOLs, patients as well, but you've also been very dialed into what's going on the global stage and recently returned from JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. What were your key takeaways this year?
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway from the JP Morgan Conference 2026 is that there's a lot more enthusiasm, a lot of positive energy around the healthcare business right now. Everyone I talk to feels that deal making is going to accelerate. The IPO window seems to be opening, and so there's a lot of people with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of positivity about getting deals done. Now that those might not be the big IPOs, it might not be the big M&A, it might more commonly be the licensing deals, and we see a lot of that going on right now too. I mean, we're very focused on what we've put on our wish list that we want to in-license as the next programs for our portfolio. But similarly, when we look around, all the people that we met at JP Morgan, people are really enthusiastic about how the market's going to turn out this year.
And what seems to be driving that?
I don't know. There's always a focus on metabolic. There's a focus on AI and drug development, of course. These are certainly drivers, but in addition to that, there's a lot of enthusiasm around oncology, also renewed enthusiasm in neurodegenerative diseases. Not only the Alzheimer's treatments for removing or reducing amyloid beta buildup, but more approaches toward resolving neurodegenerative disease is another sort of topic that we saw come up quite a bit. China is there's a lot of buzz around China. China has the ability to get clinical trials done in country cheaper and faster than many other places around the world. So that enables great technology, great science being developed in China to reach a point of maturity faster than other countries around the world. That gives them, they're kind of in the driver's seat to be able to out-license those programs. So a lot of people are focused on what can they pull out of Chinese biotech at this point. So that's another one that's certainly got a lot of momentum behind it.
And so what do you see as being some of the common misconceptions that global executives have about Japan that remain today?
Yeah, well, one thing we've been trying to, in general, move the needle on how people perceive Japan in terms of the difficulty of getting a regulatory approval or the difficulty of getting pricing reimbursement, and that really hasn't changed. I would say that the Japanese regulators have done the government in general, the PMDA, of course, the MHLW, they've done a great job at doing what they can to reduce regulation, to deregulate, to rationalize the steps that are needed to secure an approval in Japan. They've done a lot about the harmonization throughout Asia, or ex-China Asia, I would say. And they've done a lot with the collaboration with the US in terms of opening their DC office and really trying to be more visible to many of the biotech companies, pharma companies, et cetera, to bring them in. But I think there's still some issues. I think that despite our efforts, despite the government's efforts, also, I think the mindset has not shifted toward Japan is really accessible. Japan is easy to get into, which is a message that we'd like to disseminate, but that's not readily understood or accepted yet. So there's a lot more to do on this and for people to start thinking of Japan as their next market after the US.
Okay, so some tangible steps in the right direction, but not to the magnitude that's really reaching the desks of global CEOs, the decision makers looking over Japan quite yet.
Yeah, that's right. And we do know that when most of the innovation is being created and moved forward by smaller companies, the emerging biopharma companies, or in device terms, med tech startups, they have very limited bandwidth to think about anything beyond their home country, which is often the US, or even if it's a company that originated outside of the US, they're focused primarily on the US market. So those folks, depending on their funding situation, there are a few examples actually of companies who were moving forward in the US and have decided to give up and look for other markets outside of the US, and some of those are coming to Japan. But we don't want to encourage companies to just come to Japan out of desperation. We want them to simultaneously move forward their development program in their home country, their primary country of focus, as well as move on Japan's regulatory and clinical progress at the same time. So that's really what we're trying to proselytize as we go into these meetings.
Right, so don't let Japan become the fallback when there's no other options, but really explore how, with the right advice and guidance, Japan can be a simultaneous development to the US and or the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, opportunities are where the investment is. That's often first-in-class products, and you have your own new product launch to speak to that's do you want to share a little bit about that?
I'd love to. So this is the Alpha Tau Medical, originated out of Israel. And this company and the inventors of this technology really came up with an amazing solution. And the professors that came up with this, they found a way to mobilize the alpha particle. So in radiation and radiation oncology, you've got different types of radiation that can be used for therapeutic benefit. However, the alpha particle is a large particle that is like a bowling ball. And if you can mobilize it to go through cancer DNA, it will blast through it and kill the DNA, because it's blasting through both the DNA strands at the same time, and therefore the DNA can't repair itself. It also doesn't require that there's oxygen in the tumor, so that other forms of radiation are actually exploding the oxygen particles that are in the tumor, and then you get the destruction of cancer DNA based on being able to explode the oxygen. For alpha particles, that's not the case. But until now, the alpha particle has only been traveling in normal life. So in the air around us right now, there's some amount of radon gas. So we'll be breathing it, but it's not bad for us, because radon is only going, the alpha particle coming off of radon gas is only going to travel 0.7 millimeters roughly. So slightly less. Slightly less than 1 millimeter in normal life. But the inventors at Alpha Tau, they figured out how to mobilize the alpha particle by inducing, through their manufacturing process, they induce a 4-stage firework display. So if you can imagine cancerous tumor, and inside that tumor, if you can place their device, and then it will initiate a 4 times firework display, so 4-stage firework display. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you're getting in every direction about a 4 millimeter dissemination into the tumor, all around the central post of this needle-like object that you would place inside the tumor. So now, for the first time ever, we have an alpha particle that can actually destroy the cancerous tumor and get full coverage of that destruction. So this is amazing. It's been a great pleasure for us, an honor for us to be involved with that company and Alpha Tau Medical to bring forward that technology in Japan. It's been a very long process, though. So when we, at the beginning of every program, you think that it's going to be done and completed much sooner than it ends up being, almost in every case, I think. But in our case, being a small company, we had just brought on that program, and we were getting the clinical trial up and running, and then COVID hits, so then your recruitment pace slows down to 0. So there were some issues along the way that slowed us down. And when you're in the process of working hand in hand back and forth with the PMDA, you also, in the case of us and our team, we're always wishing that it would be a little bit faster. But the one thing that we realize is now that we have the approval, that the PMDA, and we're so grateful to them because they really broke new ground in being able to come up with this approval. Because for a foreign-derived medical device that's a new category in Japan, this is the first time, we believe it's the first time ever, that a foreign-derived new category medical device has been approved in Japan before the US or Europe. We can't find another example. There are examples of near simultaneous approvals, or even Japan before overseas in the case of a harmonization clinical trial or a multinational clinical trial that was done together for the purpose of seeking simultaneous approval. But in our case, the clinical trial was done in Japan only for Japan approval, and we can't find another example where, based on Japan data, a foreign medical device has been approved in Japan before the US or Europe. So this, now we, in hindsight, we're looking back at the partnership with the PMDA, and we're so grateful that they had the courage to really create that new pathway. As with every organization, the PMDA is, from the management of the PMDA, right? They're talking about how they're open for first in human, they're open for Japan first approvals. But as you know, in a Japanese organization, everything comes down to the individual person in charge of a file. And they need to push things forward and do the hard work of moving forward toward that approval. And when they see that, there's nowhere around the world that has approved this device, and so they're creating that new pathway all by themselves without being able to lean on something that somebody else did, such as an FDA approval or an EU approval that they could point to in order to, have some more comfort, or because, as you know, maybe it's not across the board, but in general, people at the working level of a Japanese organization tend to be risk averse. And so they see doing something first in the world is somewhat risky for their career. So we look back at the entire process of working with the PMDA, MHLW on this program. yes, it took us 7 years to get to this point. It should have been, we wish it could have been shorter, but we also think, we're probably at least a year in advance of a US approval for this technology. So we think, wow, what a great job it was that the PMDA was able to do, and we look back with great fondness and gratitude for that partnership.
Yeah, it really speaks to how consensus is so important in Japan as an organization, whether you're a company or the PMDA. But ultimately, it's the relationship with the person in charge. So that's really interesting. But it's also really interesting how you've essentially just formed a playbook here for something that's never been done before.
Yeah.
What do you see as being the opportunity for you in commercializing Alpha Tau, since this is a first in class, first in category rollout for you here in Japan? Where there's is there a model you can copy and paste into Japan, or what does the blank canvas look like for you?
Yeah, we think so. So whenever you're doing something new, it's going to take a lot of education. It's going to take a lot of training. It's really creating a new therapy category rather than it's not like selling a drug or selling a device in an existing category. It needs to involve hospitals that have great collaboration among departments, because we're going to need to be talking with internal medicine, the people who are in charge of the drugs for chemotherapy. We need to be in contact with the people who are in head and neck surgery, also oral surgery, and also radiation oncology. All of these specialties are going to be very important to those joint decisions, along with the patients, right? Because as the ability to explain to the patient what their treatment options are, and have the patients make that choice is really global best practice, but also in Japan. And to be able to offer this new opportunity and this new option to patients, it's going to require that we have every specialty on board, trained up, ready to deliver the best message to the patients, to enable the patients and their families make the best choice for them. So it's going to take a lot of, you might call it heavy lifting, really, to educate the market and work very closely with our ad board of the key opinion leader doctors in order to make sure that everything is going the right way, and the right patients are selected for a treatment that makes sense for them. So that's what we're going to do. So if you look for who has a playbook in creating new therapeutic models, you would look to, in our case, since we have people in-house who have done it, we look to the way that transcatheter heart valves were rolled out.
Right.
Ben Pratt on
Yes.
our team was instrumental in doing that. So we're really going to look at that playbook on the commercialization side, in terms of how you involve multiple disciplines within a hospital in order to safely and most effectively roll out a new therapy.
Yeah, fantastic. And you speak to a really good point about leadership competencies there. Ben's background may not be oncology per se before HekaBio, but clearly there's a competency he brings to the table to enable this first-in-class, first-in-category launch.
Yeah.
Where else are you looking to develop partnerships in Japan to enable Alpha Tau to live up to its potential?
Yeah. Our business model is that we've, for now, chosen not to hire a big sales force, right? And so over time, as we engage Japanese strategic partners, part of the strategy for us is to be able to lean on those strategic partners for a larger sales force impact. So we want to be, at HekaBio, we want to be the company that can pick great technologies great solutions from around the world, we can secure the clinical and regulatory success and move forward to the commercial launch. But we don't want to have a large sales force in-house. So we want to keep that pretty tight and kind of a control tower type of business model, and be able to leverage the strategic partners that we have for the larger impact. So for the time being, now we're working with the PMDA, who have requested that we keep the number of facilities pretty tight for the initial launch, in order to make sure that the post-marketing study is done in the best way. So we're going to start slow, and with HekaBio staff alone, we're going to manage that during the PMS, or the post-marketing surveillance phase. And then how to branch out to many more cancer centers after the PMS phase will be something that we're considering as we go.
And what do patients need to know? What should patients know about their role in the decision-making for their treatment?
Yeah, well, I think it's important for patients to look at all different opportunities, be they approved programs. They'll also be very interested in finding more experimental programs that are available for enrollment into a clinical trial, for example. So I think if there are cancer patients and their families should be aware of as much information as they possibly can have, and I think the best doctors for those patients are going to be really consultative to help them make those best decisions. I can't name names, but I was very fortunate to observe a star doctor in action on exactly this issue recently, where I was advising the patient and their family about what the options would be for a particular type of a very aggressive head and neck cancer. Is it going to be the alpha DaRT? Is it going to be the something else? And the type of consultative approach to understand the patient and their family members' situation, ability to travel, ability to tolerate hospitalization for a period of time if necessary. These types of considerations, and then it really helps. A consultative doctor can be so important for a family. This family that I observed, they had gone into the meeting with their mind set on a particular strategy, okay, and they were swayed by the doctor to do something completely different, which in their minds and the doctor's mind is a safer approach for that treatment. So doctors are really important, but I think we're beyond the phase now in Japan where people will just listen to the doctor's opinion and not have their own opinion. Yeah. It's really important to have their own opinion, do their own research, but then listen to, and if the doctor they find is not a consultative or collaborative doctor, then they should find a different one for sure, because everybody, and it often tends to be a family decision as well. It's not just the patient, but it's his in this case his daughters who are thinking around all the issues and picking what's best for that person.
And I understand another obstacle you had to overcome to make this, to get to this point, was to find space to manufacture in Japan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this is still in process. So we have secured a location to build out a manufacturing facility, but haven't started that process yet. And that's really going to be the manufacturing. Is the decision on when to build that manufacturing is going to be driven by the Alpha Tau medical folks themselves. Right. We have found the space and secured that lease, but they're going to be the ones to make that determination. There's a switchover point where right now we can they can manufacture in Jerusalem, and in the near future, they're also going to be able to manufacture in the US and send to us. So that security of supply will be guaranteed through those supply mechanisms. And now that there's a direct flight from Israel, we can cover just about any day of the week in terms of being able to import and clear customs and get that delivered just in time to the hospitals. But there will be a point where the volume of supply is really going to require us to have in-country manufacturing. So we look forward to that. I think it's a natural evolution for the business. And it's not my decision to make by myself, so we need to rely on our partners at Alpha Tau to make that decision. And we'll certainly be giving them our opinion as we go on that.
And of course, the Japanese government has made a stride forward in announcing this new 100 billion yen healthcare bill as well, late last year in 2025. Yeah. What's your read on that?
Yeah, so my view on the government policy and momentum right now is a couple things. So, not only the bill that was announced, but looking at their, and talking with people who are involved with those deliberations, what I really understand is that the digitization is becoming so important for a couple different reasons. But you might assume that Japan, with a single-payer healthcare system, and every resident on that single-payer healthcare system, so Japan should have perfect records, and they should be perfectly electronic, and there should be, you should have access to all of your own data, and every hospital you go to should know the entire history of you at the moment you come in the door. As we know, that's not the case. So Japan misses out on a lot of opportunities, but not having that perfect data availability. And many hospitals and clinics around Japan are still without electronic medical records, and the electronic medical records in one hospital don't talk to the electronic medical records in another. So eventually that data comes into anything that's billed to the government will get registered as insurance points. But how does that go back to the individual patient and the hospital or clinic where they got service is still not optimized. And so I think, and I know the government's working really hard on this. This is probably it seems to be quite an important part of their motivation to improve. So getting the full digitization or the digital transformation of healthcare systems is, or healthcare hospital systems and electronic medical records in general is really important. I think the government may not care so much about personal electronic medical records, but I think this is, to the people, the patients and the individuals that I talk to, this is becoming more important for them to really feel that they've got ownership for their own cases and their own health. And even outside of medical treatment, to understand what you get your health checkup every year, or maybe you want to link something else to that, your exercise record, right? Or your, maybe, like I'm an avid blood donor because I have O minus, so I feel it's like my responsibility to give blood. So, then they send back an analysis of my blood based on every time I give blood at the Red Cross Center here, but there's no connection of that, or the number of steps that I walk every day, or the vitamins that I'm taking, things like that, never will hit the personal health record, right?
Right.
So the idea of the electronic medical record, which is important to the government, the personal health record, which is, just a slight jump away from that, but also very important to the individual. I think these are important things. But getting back to the government, what they're working on really hard is also the balancing and optimization of number of doctors, number of healthcare workers, number of elderly care workers, number of hospital beds, particularly in the countryside, where the population is well above the 30% in general over 65 nationwide, but it's essentially more like 40 when you get to some of the countryside areas, and people are less and less able to care for themselves and require more and more elderly care, more and more assistance with mobility. So some of these issues, as well as due to the overall declining population, if you look at the data around the world, you see that Japan has just about the right number of doctors and nurses, but they're covering so many more hospital beds than their counterpart healthcare workers in the U.S. or UK or Germany or other countries in the G7. So, there's overworking based on the number of beds and the number of patients' visits that the doctors and nurses need to cover. I believe the government is intently working on how to most appropriately reduce the number of beds that are in each municipality around Japan and figuring that out. I think that's a way that they see that in general they'll be able to bring more profitability into the medical institutions, whereas traditionally a lot of the Japanese hospitals are losing money. And part of that may be due to overcapacity.
Right.
Yeah, but part of it also is, I'm not exactly sure how the government thinks about if we're at capacity, if we're at the right capacity or under capacity for doctors and nurses. I haven't had that insight from the government itself. But I do know the government is concerned about elderly care people and what can we do there, given that there's a shortage in the people versus the need that's required there.
Yeah.
So these I believe are some of the issues. You mentioned other parts of the bill with granting opportunities available for building the biotech ecosystem, particularly in Japan. I think that's really important. Building out the ecosystem for development, and there's a lot of people working in this area, and I think there's a lot of people doing great work there. Particularly with the AMED granting and the ability for the certified VCs to be able to double match. For AMED to be able to double match what the certified VCs are committing in capital to new startups. This is great, and there's actually a lot of awareness of this construct overseas too. If talking with some of the people at JPM last week, people are saying, Japan's got this great granting opportunity, and I think honestly they're probably balancing that with their own experience with uncertainty around the NIH granting in the U.S. and they're thinking where else can we get non-dilutive funding from, and they hear that Japan has some great opportunities. So this may in fact be a trigger for bringing more development to Japan, but I also think, this is just my personal opinion, I think when development, if Japan wants to build and encourage the building of the development ecosystem in Japan, it's probably wisest for them to caveat their granting based on what part of the development is actually going to happen in Japan.
Right.
Which, to my understanding, is what Australia has great rebates on spending, but the rebates are based on a percentage of what's done in Australia. My understanding of what Japan is doing is that the development can be done anywhere. And there may be, depending on the program, it makes sense that there may be some leaking of where that development occurs that from the government's perspective is either intentional or unintentional, I'm not sure, but may have less of an impact on building the enduring ecosystem that Japan intends to build with these grants. So this is one thing that I will be looking at to see how the impact is building over time.
I suppose it makes sense from the perspective of there's simply not enough talent in certain skill sets in Japan, like CMOs and CSOs, for example.
Yeah.
And the biotech community in Japan in general is described as being perhaps less entrepreneurial and aggressive than the US or even China, for example. And the aging population is evident in that many of the CEOs or CXOs of these biotechs are approaching retirement, which begs the question, how can Japan, how can we as an industry, as a society, develop the next generation of leaders?
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, to that, it's a great point, Ryan. In fact, you know, if the talent is not available here, then we must look outside, or we must look to, you know, foreign leadership to come in and play a role. You know, one of the comments that I heard was, you know, it's like Shohei Ohtani. You don't. Why would you force him to play only in the Japan League, and you know, stunt his growth when he can be a superstar in the big leagues? So the same argument, and really thinking globally about how the development should evolve is an argument that I've heard before, but I think it does make sense. Yeah.
So if you were a CEO of a global healthcare company in the US, for example, let's say, and you're looking at Japan, you've heard, oh, Japan's got this funding pathway. What advice would you give them to consider to, you know, take action in terms of caution, but, you know, also practical steps they can take to make it happen in Japan?
Yeah. So for an existing ongoing bioventure in the U.S., there probably isn't a way for them to take advantage of that program. I think the funding really requires that you've got a single asset, and normally it needs to be a newly developed company in order to take advantage of that funding. So if a company has an asset that they wouldn't mind unloading and reformulating as a Japanese company in order to move that program forward, that could be one. Though I don't think those cases are very common or you know, easy to identify. But that would be one way that they could take advantage of that. The main way, though, that we see overseas emerging biopharma thinking about you know, kicking off a Japan strategy that could be beneficial for them over the long term is, you know, we really encourage them to think about Japan earlier in the development, where, as I believe you know, for phase 2 and phase 3 clinical development around the world, US and Europe, that has a Japan component to it, it's only like 30% or less. So the world or the universe of programs that are not yet thinking about Japan is so enormous. And those are the people that we want to go to and say, hey, you should think about Japan. And for no additional money spent, you could carve out a percentage of your cases and give them to someone who can take on the Japan development simultaneously, and then you could target getting simultaneous approval in the US and Japan. Why wouldn't you do that? And so these are the arguments that we want to make for those companies that are potentially interested in Japan.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great message to all those executives out there who are in that bucket. Reach out to Rob. Rob can show you the way and shed some light on your path. Rob, thank you so much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you and get into where your head's at, because you're a thinker, you're a doer, a mover and a shaker. Is there anything else that you'd like to add today?
No, let me just kind of echo what you said, Ryan. First of all, it's great to be here to catch up. Happy New Year, happy 2026.
Happy New Year.
Really, Japan is open for business. I think the government, the regulators have done everything they possibly can. Now it's up to us in business to take advantage of the systems and the opportunities that the Japan market offers. It's up to us now to make the effort and capitalize on the advantages that Japan has.
Thank you. And for those looking for leadership in Japan, growth starts with the right leader. And 2025 has been a very successful year for us, partnering with a select few clients who are seeing rapid, widespread adoption of their therapies and products in Japan. So if you are thinking about who's the right leader for us, how can we think ahead and map out what success looks like for us in Japan, starting with the right people, reach out today. We'd love to talk to you. Rob, thank you very much, and all the best for 2026.
Thanks, Ryan.